The Lord is with you, mighty warrior. What a greeting. Imagine just going about your daily business and an angel of the Lord appears to you and proclaims over you that despite how you feel about yourself, you're actually a mighty warrior. And imagine what would go through your mind when you think, yeah, but what about this and what about that? You know, I'm a bit nervous. You know, I've never been a risk taker. Nobody in my family or my friendship group would say I was a mighty warrior. That would be inevitable, wouldn't it, as you start to process what you think about yourself. But God has his own thoughts about us. And God has his own view of who we are and, more importantly, who we can and will be. And in Judges chapter 6, that was verse 12, I was sort of quoting to you there. That's exactly what happens to Gideon. And what I love about that story, it's the first verse I ever preached on, actually, is the idea that there's my view of myself and perhaps Satan's view of myself. And then there's the really important one, the only one that really matters, which is God's view of me. And if God says I'm a mighty warrior, then I am a mighty warrior. My name's Mark Buchanan. I'm the CEO here at Eden.co.uk. And I'm just wanting to bring scriptures to you in these difficult times that will give you something to think about, something to boost your faith, and something to maintain hope. So what's interesting about the story of Gideon is that God proclaims that over Gideon and then pretty much waits to see what Gideon's reaction will be. And then he sets a series of tests which you can read through Judges chapter 6 and into chapter 7, the whole story. But it's a set of tasks. God doesn't set Gideon up for the big battle right at the beginning. He takes him in stages. And at each stage, Gideon discovers that he has the courage for what he's been asked to do. And I think this is relevant for us in this tricky time because many of us have got to lead our families. That might be just leading yourself. Maybe you've got a husband or wife, you've got kids, and we have to walk through this together. There's plenty of things in the news that might make people nervous and afraid, but we have to walk through this and not just crawl through it as survivors, but to walk through this and actually to conquer the circumstances that we're in so that we don't have our joy taken away, so that God can still speak, so that we're still available to him to do whatever he might want us to do in our street or in our community, as well as in our families. And it's just this idea that I want to put forward today is courage comes when you need it. Probably the most terrifying thing I've ever done is many years ago when I was smuggling Bibles into the Middle East. And I was going into a particular country, and the only way to get into that country was illegal. And the last bit of the journey was you had to wade across a river and then you were in. And the guide who was with us stopped us in the middle of the river and said, at the moment, all you've done is get yourself wet. But if you take another step, then in effect, you have made an illegal move. There'll be a bounty on your head. You might get shot and killed. So it's up to you to decide, is this really what you think you should do? And I remember worrying about that moment because I knew it was going to come. We all knew what the drill was. But the funny thing is, in the moment that it came to the decision, I just had an icy calm certainty this was the right thing to do and that the Lord was with me. And I'd love to say that I overcame my fears, but it just seemed obvious that I needed to do that. There was an influx of courage in my heart because I needed it then. And it wasn't there 2 steps back. But it stayed with me that whole time. And yes, it was a very frightening time all the time that we were in country. But behind the fear, underneath the fear, more fundamental than the fear was this knowledge God had drawn courage out of me. In effect, he'd proclaimed over me the same thing he said over Gideon, you are a mighty warrior. And he wasn't saying that because of any characteristic of mine. He was saying it because of a characteristic of his own, which is God can give courage to all those who will collaborate with him. So it doesn't have to be big deeds of daring do. It's just maintaining your family, being positive for all those around you, keeping time with God with your family, not allowing the onslaught of depressing news to crush your spirit, finding time to give a kind word to other people, to think about neighbours and other people in our community. All of us can be mighty warriors, because God says so.